Go on, B. Expectation. Good morning and welcome to the first Monday meditation where I am working to shift the sense of what Mondays are or can be. The drudgy Monday versus the Monday where we get to sit in presence and maybe start our week in a different way. So thank you for attending. This month of February for these Monday meditations is going to be about the senses. And so today we're going to start to explore different levels of our sensory awareness and what it means to us. Some of the things we've done before, it's real easy to ponder your nose, especially when you smell something. It's not so great. You're very aware of that. There are other senses that we're less aware of, and that's what I'm hoping to get to. Just as a little bit of housekeeping before we get started, you don't have to be a seasoned meditator for this to work for you. There are some things to know that, being present and not being comfortable, but not falling asleep is probably a good position for you. You can have your eyes open or closed, whatever works for you, and a soft gaze where you're sort of looking at nothing, as you're staring at something. That can be a very effective way of doing meditation without closing your eyes. As always, if anything feels uncomfortable, try to stick with it a little bit. But if it's just not where you are today, open your eyes up. You can be part of the process with just listening. So that's a valid interaction for this as well. So for our bit of mini training today, we're going to talk about the senses as the beginning of all of our feelings and what the feelings turn into and beyond. Our primary way of interacting with our world is through our senses. You know, we feel things, we see things, we hear things, we taste things. They allow us to figure out what needs to be done next in some instances, or in other instances, we figure out that we need to eat something because our stomach is growling. And that's a sense that we don't talk about a lot. When we notice inner bodily works and functioning, that's called interoception, which is a very important feeling state that we don't get into a whole bunch. We'll get into it a little bit today. So our primary space of exploring or engaging or experiencing the world is through our senses. And from that sensation state come our feelings, come our patterns, patterns that are healthy for us, like if we touch the stove, we know it's going to be hot, so we don't touch the stove or we pull away. And other patterns or behaviors or thoughts that go along with senses that maybe don't serve us so well. All of them are the natural human way of being in the world. So in the world of meditation, the senses are something that also help us understand our inner wisdom. And in fact, being connected more to our senses gives us the ability to be more wise about where we are, what we need, what we choose to do instead of reacting. So it's definitely exploring the senses is definitely a gateway in to other things related to meditation and mindfulness. And when we train in these things, we become more aware of our own inner wisdom. We become more aware of what we want to pay attention to or what we need to pay attention to, and maybe what can be shifted to the side a little bit. And I recently watched a diver show, and I tried to remember the name of it so I could give it to you here. But there was a woman who was doing the longest free dive that had ever been done. And she jumped in the water and said something very interesting. She said she was scared about what was happening until she realized this was a sensation, excuse me, that it was just a sensation. She didn't have to pay attention to it if she didn't want to. It wasn't something that was telling her she was in danger. It was just feeling cold. And when she was able to put that thought into her mind, she was able to do her dive. So being in touch with our senses is a really important component of us being able to make choices versus reacting, versus, letting our fear come up or whatever pattern of thinking come up that goes with that. So training in our senses helps us increase our inner wisdom. So our goal today is really just going through the different parts of our sensate body, noticing what's there, being able to hold it without judgment as much as we can. There is a reason this is called a practice. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. I'm so sorry. This is called a practice because we have to work at changing these patterns. It isn't something that we think about one and done sort of thing. It's a process over time. So when we train in this, we are able to more easily let go of things like judgment over time. So if it's not so effective for you this morning, that's okay. That's how we start. So let yourself come to a position where you can hold, be comfortable in this position for maybe another 10 or 15 minutes. For some people, sitting with your legs on the floor, with your body, your spine straight and erect, letting your shoulders drop. And maybe at the beginning here, pay a little bit of attention to tension you might be holding in your face, especially around the eyes, around the mouth. Notice what happens when you bring attention to that or those tense places. And let's tap into the awareness of where you are right now. You just came from somewhere to be here. What did you bring with you? Maybe you are hurrying to get to work, and this is a short stop in your day. Maybe you just rolled out of bed. What's showing up for you? What's showing up in your mind or your thoughts? What's showing up in your heart? How is your body holding the movement or sensation of what was before? We're not trying to change anything here. Just notice. So maybe deepening this sense of yourself. Lean into your body a little bit more. We're leaning into our inner sense of ourself. That fancy word, interoception. So what else is here? It's that time in the morning that you might be a little hungry. Maybe your coffee's kicked in. And you can feel the energy of it moving through your body. Excuse me. And let's bring attention then to where you are in space. Again, related to your interoception. Feeling into your feet on the ground. Moving up your legs and feeling yourself sitting in your chair. Noticing the connection between you and the chair. If your hands are on your legs, maybe bring a little attention to that warm space where your hands meet your legs. And maybe the contrast between that and what the tops of your hands feel like. Maybe you're leaning up against the back of your chair. Let yourself bring attention to the support you're receiving, how you're being held in this moment by this chair you're sitting in. And if you happen to be laying down or standing, just simply bring awareness to the places where you are maybe connecting to the floor or connecting to the bed. What is the quality of your experience? Do you notice fuzzy feelings? Do you notice tightness, flow, or movement? Just lean into those as your anchor for this moment, anchoring you back into the present moment. And if you found that your brain has wandered, as it is wont to do, simply bring back your attention to where we're focused or what comes more forward for you. We can always start again. So moving into the sensation of breath, I'd like you to draw your attention to your nose or your mouth if you're breathing through your mouth this morning. Notice how it feels for the breath to come in. The sensation of your palate. And maybe with the next breath, let's follow it all the way to the lungs. So coming in your nose, across your palate, down your throat, into your lungs, and feeling the expansion of your chest. If you want to hold it for a second, that's okay as well. And then follow it back out. Breath moving from your lungs through your throat, over your palate, and out your nose. And maybe as you exhale this breath, pause just a moment, feeling the sense of what it felt like to breathe, the sense of what it feels like to pause. Maybe play with this process, the sensation, for a few minutes. Anchoring your presence in your breath and the sensations the breath brings. So, one of the things that can be an interesting twist on our experiences and something that moves into maybe starting to describe our senses, aside from using descriptive words, is letting yourself maybe bring colors to your sensations. So, if we stick with breath for a minute, is there a color you would associate with what it feels like to breathe? What it feels like when the breath is in your lungs? Or maybe what it feels like to pause? If this doesn't come naturally, don't worry, that's okay. But if you do have a sense of the color, what color would be here in this moment with this breath? Sometimes our felt sense can be described very well by textures. So again, leaning into your breath. We just talked about colors. And are there any textures that you notice? After a while, textures can sometimes be a better descriptor of where we are than other things. On those days where things are a little rough for me, I talk about feeling like sandpaper, for instance. So just let yourself be aware and tap into anything like that that may be coming up. Those are valuable, valid, and important sense experiences as well. And so maybe take the next breath or two to explore colors and textures wherever you might notice them in your body. And I invite you to shift your awareness to what you can hear right now. It's very easy sometimes to consider noise as a detriment to meditation, but just with the breath or feeling into what we're noticing internally, hearing is another pathway to presence. This is where it requires us to not be judgmental about what we're hearing. A jackhammer outside our window can be just as effective to lean into as a pathway to presence as a bird song, although one may be considered a little more pleasant than the other. They both have bearing. They're both part of this moment right now. So let your ears expand into the room. What are the sounds that are most easily heard? And if you pause with those sounds, if you focus on those sounds, what other things can you hear? There's constantly around us a soundscape. And I think as humans, we get pretty good at tuning that stuff out so that we can do other things, which makes sense. And for today, let's explore what's there. Bring attention to the idea of, are you really listening in on what's happening in your environment? Or do you have a story going about what you think you hear? Just be aware. Let's take a couple breaths to explore our soundscape a little bit more. Shifting our focus away from our ears, let's bring it to our nose and our sense of smell. This one can be very subtle in our environment. If you don't have anything around you to smell that's significantly smelly, allow yourself to lean into what's there. Sometimes that means there really isn't much there. But your sense of smell, even when things aren't there, can still be a vehicle for presence. Your sense of smell, quote unquote, may be more of the sensation of the movement of the breath. Or if you'd like to experiment, if you imagine a cup of coffee, for instance, can you smell that? Let's take a couple of breaths just to experience what we smell or don't smell in our environment right now. So I invite you to switch from your sense of smell to your sense of taste. Just lean into and notice whatever sensation of taste you have in your mouth right now. I'm noticing a full sense of the tea I've been drinking this morning to help my gravelly throat. And just like with the sound, you might notice something that's initially very, very predominant, but lean into it a little further. What's underneath that predominant sense of taste? What qualities of taste do you notice? You may notice bitterness. You may notice sweetness. You may notice the texture of your tongue. Let these be a vehicle for connecting to your present moment, connecting to your senses. Let's explore this sense of taste for a couple of breaths. And as we come to the end of this first Monday meditation, I invite you to bring your attention back into your breath. Maybe let yourself take a couple of deep breaths. Breathing in as deeply as it feels comfortable, holding for a second with a short pause, and then exhaling. Knowing that if you feel the desire to come back into presence during your day, your breath is a vehicle as well as your senses. And as we practice today, you can lean into any one of your senses as a way to presence. If you would like to follow up with any of the journal work, I have linked the prompts in the chat. So there's the regular journal prompts, and then there's a little extra if you'd like to explore more. I appreciate you taking time to come be in presence with your senses. And I wish you all you need as you go along your day. Thank you. Excuse me. And maybe I'll see you next time. Bye.